Hello, everybody. This is a male space, and we're here for another episode of the Mansplainers. I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Stephen Baskerville, and today we have our guest, Dr. Howard Schwartz, who is a retired professor of organizational behavior. Dr. Baskerville, take it away.
Well, thank you, Bradley. I'm very pleased here to have Howard Schwartz as our guest today. He is not a huge presence on the internet or the social media. He has been interviewed. His work is greatly respected and greatly admired. As far as I know, he doesn't have his own podcast or shows or that. So I think his work deserves to be much better understood, much better known, because it explains a lot about what I mean the discussion going on and on gender relations, sexual relations, the family, the manosphere, all of that is just exploding these days. And I don't think anyone that I know of puts it into gives it more sense, more succinctly uh, than Howard Schwartz does. And yet his work is not nearly as well known as it should be. Now, I think of Howard, he's a professor of organizational theory, as I understand it. But in many ways, it is his explanation, I think, is psychology. But that immediately, I think, raises red flags with some people. They expect a lot of jargon, a lot of psychobabble, a lot of hocus pocus. And one of the striking things about Howard's work is the way he explains things, I think, in plain English, in common sense, in ways that it just makes a lot of sense. So I want to talk about it. I thought maybe a good way to start uh, our discussion is that I would maybe give a brief summary of my understanding of your work, Howard, and then maybe you could correct it where I'm wrong or fill in the gaps or extrapolate or embellish a little bit the details. And then we can maybe from there talk about some of the background to it. So yeah, just to talk about again, in my recent book, in my book, Who Lost America, published last summer, I I quote your work extensively, and I quote it at the high point of the book, the apex of the book, where it's the turning point where everything in the book is led up to this in the final chapter. And then I quote Dr. Daniel Amneas, who is another writer of one of my favorite writers, and then I quote you. I forget which one first, but I really save your work as the punchline of my own. So the way I understand it, Howard, and this again, this is my so that people understand why I was keen to get you on the show and why I'm enthusiastic about your work. But if I misunderstand it, then I'll or get anything wrong with it, we'll let you take it away from there. But my understanding is, you start with a very basic, very simple premise. When we start life, we are the world to us is our mother. Our mother is the most basic thing. She's the world to us, and she loves us. She loves us unconditionally. No matter what we do, no matter how much we cry or poop or whatever, she loves us. And she accepts all of our spontaneous impulses. And that's very comforting, of course. That's what we all want. We all want to be loved unconditionally. And we get quite used to that. But eventually, the external world creeps in. The external reality creeps in. And the rest of the world doesn't love us unconditionally. The rest of the world is indifferent to us. We're thrust outside our comfort zone by a world that's indifferent to us or unimpressed. And that the first exposure we have that is the father, who doesn't necessarily, as we find later, doesn't necessarily love us unconditionally. He loves us, but he expects us to do things. He expects accomplishments and behavior. And the father has a relationship with the mother that doesn't revolve around us. It's They have their own relationship, and she loves him. And at first we experience this. We don't like this. It's a violation. We want to reject it. but eventually were forced to accept the father on his own terms and the outside world with him. So it's kind of a promise. If we, you say, if we become like him, learning about and dealing with the world on its own terms, we can regain the love that the mother's love as we had it before. So we engage with the world. We do what it requires. We grow up a little bit. We recognize its imperfections, but we engage with it. And this, as you say, quote, offers the realization of one's potential as a vehicle for advancement or of fame or part of a career or of a moral project. So the father, the object for the father is also to become again to become the center of the mother's love. And if we he gains it through his accomplishments. He does things the mother likes and values and honors. And if we do those things also, then the mother will love us. And that's how we grow and become well-adjusted people with the love of the father and the mother. But
Yeah.
all of this, you say, is premised on one absolutely essential uh, premise, and that is the mother appreciates and feels emotionally connected to the father. She loves him. She has to love. If she loves him, then we learn to love him and the outside world, despite its demands. Now, before I turn it over to you, the striking thing about this, there's more to it in this, but I think that's a good place to stop for the moment. The pristine theory, as you call it, the good part, and we'll talk maybe a little about what happens when it doesn't go quite so well. But there's an awful lot of psychology. There's a lot of hocus pocus. There's a lot of Freudianism and Jungianism and evolutionary psychology, and none of it is provable. None of it is, it can be verified. It all depends on our willingness to accept it. But this theory is so common sense and so straightforward, and yet it is psychological. It does deal with and it's undeniable. It doesn't require the mother to be, women are like this and men are like this. No, it's the mother is this is her function and it's inescapable, and this is his father's function and this is inescapable for
Yeah.
him. So there's nothing sexist about this, or could be accused of being sexist. It's simply recognizing the functions of the way we grow up, if we grow up in a healthy way. So anyway, that's my understanding. T Tell me where feel free to embellish or to correct me or whatever.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to thank you for your very kind words. Um, I don't, well, the thing that I do worst in life is marketing. Um,
Yeah,
and so I understand perfectly that no, aside from you, nobody's read it. It's, um, I'd like people to read it, but I just, it just doesn't come naturally to me to make to make to make it available. You know?
I understand that. It's sad because there's some good minds out there who are the same way, the same disposition. They just want to write down the truth. They look for the right words. They want to explain it clearly, and they don't go on social media and they don't advertise themselves. I'm a little that way myself,
Yeah,
so I understand that.
yeah. I'd love to be able to do it. I just don't know how, and I can't. Right. So I write for um I'm writing for 1,000 years hence somebody might pick up on it. Um, but in the meantime, I can just do I can just do my work. And I'm so glad that you've picked up on it. You're my fan.
Yeah, and but it's not. It doesn't take another scholar. I think people should be able to understand this.
I
So I'm
tried
sorry.
to
Go ahead.
I tried to express it in a way that makes sense to me, and that I think would make sense to other people. It's not intended to be obscure, you know.
All right.
Let me go back to one thing that you said. Everything that you said is fine, right? Um, but it does um it's a bit jumbled. I mean, there are parts that follow along with the logic, um, that have gotten kind of condensed. And the main thing is this, that um, the mother loves the child, right? And gives the child a feeling that the world revolves around it with love. Now that is a very pregnant metaphor and relates not only to child rearing specifically, but it relates also to a religion. This is this is the prototype of the person's connection with God. And we can see that they're really you really can't do any better than that, you know,
God
to
the Father.
be loved in this way. But at the same time, while one is loved in this way, um, one also knows, although one may put this aside, one also knows that it can be taken away. That uh, important as it is for mother to love us, so the devastation that would occur if mother didn't love us is becomes absolute. So we love mother absolutely, but we are terrified by her. So what are we going to do? I mean, how can we maintain the connection with mother while at the same time um, be becoming safe in it? Now, this project, on the one hand, loving the mother, loving women, really, while at the same time being safe in the face of their possible abandonment, is what a man's life consists in. The work that we do is a way of getting women to appreciate us for what we do so that they will allow us to hang around. They will keep us. And what we call a successful person is a person who has managed that, um, who is tight with the women or a woman, and at the same time is secure in her love. Now, how does a guy do this? Well, I think a guy does this by doing things that, by definition, he does this. He does things by uh, allowing her simply to be the person that she is, allowing her to be herself, so that she will be able to um, um, you know I missed the point.
Well, can we say that much of our self-esteem as men is bound up in the women that we fancy?
Oh, of course. Of course. But where else is it going to be? I mean, look, everything we do that gains us self-esteem was essentially for the purpose of gaining this connection. I mean, when Freud said it was all sex, that's what he meant. Not just that all you wanted to do was to get laid, but that rather um, the most important thing to be is to be connected. In this case, the men are connected with women. There isn't anything else. I mean, we have the idea that a meeting is kind of easy to come by. It's not easy to come by. What else? What aside from connection counts as being worthwhile. It all feeds into that. And there really isn't anything outside of it. But the thing is so Ben's project is to do whatever it is that women are going to appreciate, in the sense that they want to keep them around, and what what they appreciate really is just to be themselves.
Right.
What is be themselves? Be that, and this is something that I'm working on now. To be themselves, the great, the great, the great secret here is that to be themselves is to take the idea of themselves that they get um, from their infants. Um, the infant has the sense of her as perfect, as omniscient, as all knowing, and um, the sense that she has of herself is to borrow on this, to come to see herself from the infant's perspective. Um, and if she and so what the man's job is to um, deal in the world so that this is not impinged upon.
Right. Howard, maybe at this point we should push a little further to because what I should have mentioned at the outset of this is that your theory really explains, as we'll see in a moment, the purpose of your theory. I didn't state this, is really to explain what we used to call a few years ago political correctness, or
Yes.
what we now call in your book, or what we now call woke ideology. But I think really what you're explaining here is nothing less than ideology itself, modern ideology. And this is important. This is another reason for my enthusiasm, because this is what I have made my life's work. This is my specialty as an academic, is modern radical ideological movements, starting in which didn't exist in the ancient world. They didn't exist in the medieval world, but they've dominated in many ways. They've defined almost modernity and modern politics and modern history. And this is what you're explaining when you show what happens when this nice cozy picture of the womb, all of us in the working our way constructively out of the womb and into the family, and into the rest of the world. But it doesn't always work out that way, because this is what we undermine. And especially we undermine it today by radical, I'll say by radical sexual ideology. It's governmental institutions like welfare and divorce, which divide and, well, let's start at the beginning. You say, as expressed in feminist, I say this, as expressed in feminist ideology, at least, or modern ideology of all kinds. Quote, this is quoting from you, the most striking characteristic of our time is that the mother resents the father. She doesn't love him. She not only does she might despise him, she might look down on him, but I think that's the perfect word, and I want to come back to that. She resents the father. Because resentment, as Nietzsche pointed out, and others have pointed it out, is one of the most poisonous and dangerous emotions in politics.
Mhm. Sure.
So with the mother turned against the father, then, quote, the way for the children to become again the object of the mother's love is by joining her in her hatred of the father and
Yes.
the attendant wish to destroy him. And I want to just read a couple of lines here um, about how this animosity of the mother, followed by the children, uh, is reminiscent of our current of all ideology. I think especially feminist ideology, but all radical ideology. And this is the quote: "Father has not earned mother's love in this configuration, but stolen it. He claims his claims of accomplishment have all been subterfuge and lies. The victims of the theft have been all of us children, but especially the marginalized. I would say especially, women, other women and girls, but you extend it to others, any kind of minority, any claim of repression by racial or ethnic groups." I continue the quote. "He is to be hated for this theft, and the marginalized are to be loved in compensation." Okay, so he is the demon. The father becomes the villain, and the mother and the children and any, I guess, so perhaps kind of quasi-adopted children who claim to have had the love of the mother stolen from them are in the same boat. They're the oppressed, and the father is evil. Yes, did I?
Yeah,
I'm sure I compressed it too much. So please feel free to expound.
there's an awful lot in that.
Yeah.
But I'd like to go back just a little bit to what I think is the root of this, which is that the image that the infant has of the mother is an image of perfection. Given the image, given the image of her perfection, it makes perfectly good sense to her that if she were running the world, she would be making it perfect. Now, how does that compare with the guy? The guy is not perfect. The guy is working in the world in order to do something concrete. Sometimes he's going to get it right. Sometimes he's going to get it wrong. But inevitably, his work isn't perfect. Compared to his fallibility, to his limitation, her perfection stands out in great contrast. And as a result of that, um, she just doesn't think very much of him. Well, if she doesn't think very much of him, how is anybody going to explain how well he's done? Because remember, when we say he's done well, we mean that he's got a connection. He's got the ego ideal. He's got a connection with her. He can do what he wants and be loved for it. The way that a child did. Um, but now we find that he wasn't entitled to that because he's only a guy. And she, comparing herself to this guy who's only a guy, sees that he has gotten it not because of his accomplishments, but he's done it illegitimately. He must have. It would have belonged to her if she had been the center of things, and therefore, and it was his fault that she was not the center of things, because he was taking care of all his business. He was running the world. And so, but if she had been the center of things, then the world would be perfect, and everybody within it would feel the kind of love that she experienced, that she feels for her children.
Right.
Um, So why does she resent him? Well, she resents him because evidently he is experiencing a happiness that he is not entitled to, that should have been hers. And so I think we can say from that he's stolen it. He set up the world according to which goodnesses were assigned. He decided what was going to be regarded as good and what was going to be regarded as bad, and therefore his story prevailed and legitimated the theft that he subjected her to. Now, what are we going to do? Well, obviously, the clearest thing to do is to get rid of him, to take what he has accomplished and to denigrate it. But at the same time, I think we can also grant that um, he not only stole this goodness from mother, he stole it from whoever didn't have it. In other words, the marginalized. So you can look around and you can see somebody who wasn't loved the way the father is loved, and you can conclude from this that he isn't loved because the father took the love. He stole it.
Right. Let me
So
just read
what?
that passage. I was just going to read that passage there because I think, um, yeah, just to elucidate, I think that, fathers are the ones that stand for achievement. Fathers have to achieve, men have to achieve things. So the father and men set rules for the father, as you say,
Right, right.
he's the patriarch. He
He's the
establishes,
one that defines what achievement is.
and he doesn't love unconditionally. You have to obey the rules. The father replaces unconditional love. This is a quote, replaces unconditional love and acceptance with rules and limits, and is
Right.
therefore the archetypal oppressor, you write. Liberation is defined by his destruction and rebellion against his rules. And not just his rules, but the rules of the entire uh, civilized order, right? Getting rid of him, I'm quoting, we will be free from the demands and expectations placed upon us. We will not be subordinate to any rules, roles, obligations, but will be able to do what we want, act on our whim in perfect safety to the accompaniment of mother's love, mother's unconditional love.
There you
Um,
go.
End quote.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Yes,
right.
yes, and I would like to also add to that. I think this is a good time to segue into this. Is that perhaps some discussion on radical movements? For example, there has been Jacobinism and Marxism. What other historical examples show this anti-father dynamic? Are there any others?
Um, Offhand, I can't. I don't know. I haven't given the matter much
Well,
thought.
well,
My
certainly
my experience has been
feminism.
with Marxism.
Well, the archetypal one would be feminism, of course. I mean, it's by your theory, according to what the logic of what you're arguing, feminism is almost kind of the pure distillation of this. That the rest have been just
Oh,
kind of dress rehearsals for the for
sure,
the for the
sure.
sexual rebellion.
Absolutely. I was thinking about things like Jacobinism, which I really don't know anything about. Um, But in a certain sense, this takes us back to the original question that you asked about where did this come from in my own where did I come to for how did I get from this? And I got to it in a way that really kind of reveals, I think, um, what that um, what that last paragraph that you mentioned brings out, which is that I hated my father, and I hated him because father was the one who told me no. And I loved my mother. My mother was an extremely seductive person. I very, it's very helpful. I really did kind of have the idea that I could replace him in her love. I remember once she was in the bathtub naked, and she gave me a smile that I can only remember as being seductive. Um, So the idea of getting rid of father so that I could have mother was right there, and as I developed intellectually, that carried forward. It carried forward in the idea um, that uh, the father's work, which is to say organization in this connection, um, was a was a system of telling people no. And once you get over the idea that the father is telling people no um, uh, without particularly loving them, because the mother is the one that loves. Um, the whole idea of civilization as an oppressive function comes into being.
Yeah. We began with quote. I'm going to quote you again here because this is, I think it helps sink the audience to people to sink in when we say it in different ways. Quote, we began everything and we should have it still. So if we do
Yeah,
not have something, it is because it has been taken away from us. Okay.
right,
End quote.
right. And
But
he's the one
then
that did it.
Right.
She
Our
certainly didn't do it. She would have given us everything.
right, unconditionally. Our,
He took it away. Yeah,
our, our task then, I'm quoting, is to destroy the Father's power. Then the world will revolve around us with love as it should. In
yes,
doing this, we must support our allies in the struggle, the marginalized, who are seen as the most grievously oppressed. End quote.
right, right. So what you can see there is that the world turns upside down.
Yeah.
Um, those who who have been successful are seen as having stolen the goodnesses, and those who are not successful are seen as having been deprived of them by whoever it was that has them. You know, there's no other venue where they could play out. Now that works. You know, man, of course, that's the root of political correctness. You know, to love those who have been deprived in the past. But what if there is any reason, any logic whereby those who have been successful earn their success, and those who were not successful um, um, uh, uh, contributed less or did damage, turns this upside down, you know? If there's any righteousness to the stratification we've had, um, that righteousness uh, is gotten rid of. And what we see instead is the exact opposite. That those who have been deprived of love in the past are entitled to more of it. And those who have had it in the past are entitled to have to have it taken away. That's where you get all that crap about privilege, you know, white privilege, because because this is essentially the a movement on the part of white women, and their guys are going to be white guys, right? That's where you get that. So all this crap about white supremacy. That's where it comes from.
Right.
The taking the characteristic of whoever it was um, that they resent and transforming that into an ideology.
Right. Well, on that point, actually, that's again, this explains so much of the modern world, not just the current ideological fashions that we live with today, but the whole. I mean, Bradley mentioned the Jacobinism of the French Revolution and Marxism of the Bolshevik, Russian, and Chinese revolutions. I would just add one thing. Uh, to answer Bradley's question, Howard, you spoke a few moments ago about how this is writ large in our religious life, where we, of course, we're God the Father, at least in the West, where God is a father, a benign father, but we rebel against him. That's what all sin is. But what is striking to me about modern ideologies is that all of the great modern revolutions, from the English Revolution in the 17th century and the French Revolution, especially the Jacobin Revolution of the 18th century, was a rebellion against the king. We dethroned the king. We executed the king. The Bolsheviks wanted to uh, uh, execute the king with a public trial, but they killed him instead. The Shah, and this is true of the Shah in the Iranian Revolution of 1979, where the Shah went into exile and died, so they didn't get a chance. But they all wanted to dethrone, and the king, of course, is the embodiment of God in the political system. He is the father.
Well, this is I think farther than I'd like to go.
Okay,
Because the ones who are looking to kill the father are candidate fathers themselves. I mean, this is a civil war, you know, um, between fathers, and each of them is claiming the right to to organize society according to its lights, and to get rid of those in whatever way who haven't organized it so far. So various faults that they've committed, various sins these become these become useful as as objects of destruction for destruction. But I don't see this as being against fathers as such. Feminism is for sure against our fathers as such. But the English Civil War, I'm not sure. And with the French, with the French Revolution, there again, the bourgeoisie, who claimed the right from the monarchy, were putting themselves up as an alternative father.
Right, right. Or band of fathers, group of fathers, which
A
is kind of
group of fathers, sure, sure.
like what Freud said, the father. So it's that's very interesting. If I could go just back to the question of the mother, you make the point at the beginning that the mother's love is unconditional. And that in turn seems to spark in us unconditional love for our mothers, but also for women generally, in the sense that it becomes
Of
very
course.
difficult to criticize women. Men are easy to criticize and to scapegoat and to vilify, but women, including even the most radical feminist women, uh, sometimes can seem to do no wrong, can do nothing.
Sure, and they demand themselves to be seen that way. I mean, their premise is their own perfection,
Uh-huh.
and uh,
These
no criticism is tolerable.
right. So these modern trad, as we call them now in the manosphere, we call them tradcons, these traditional conservatives who constantly want to, you know, uh, extol motherhood, romanticize motherhood, glorify it, and not just motherhood, which is good, but mothers themselves, women, even feminist women, and they want to vilify men almost as much as the feminists do.
Mhm.
So this is rooted in, even on the right as well as on the left. There's this unconditional, chivalry. What do they call it? What's the term nowadays, Bradley? Gynocracy,
Gynocentrism,
gynos,
but
gynocentrism.
but
Yeah,
also gynocracy is also referring to female rule,
right,
matriarchy. Yes.
right.
Well, actually, just to go back for a moment, we were talking about overthrowing kings and other political leaders. Does Donald Trump fit into any of this at all?
Donald Trump is the primal father. He, in the Freudian account, you had a father who was a tyrant and did whatever the hell he wanted to do, didn't pay any attention to anybody else. Um, but um, um, but he was loved by all of the women, and that but the sons hated him because he had all the women, right? And so they killed him. And in the course of killing him, they became a group. They became society. Now, why was that? Well, that was because he had been doing something that had been worthwhile, according to all these women. He had been manifesting the various social functions that a society needs fulfilled. Except that he was doing it not in accordance with some prearranged plan. He was doing it according to his whim. Um, and when the sons killed him, they took his whim as being a program for their own um, um, for their own social function. So while he did it spontaneously, they came to do it on an organized basis, and that was the root of civilization.
Right. I want to just add here too, if listeners are scared off by this Freudian invocation of Freud, I think this part of his theory is actually very consistent with the Bible, for one thing, and also with, if you look at early modern political theory, what you just outlined about the killing of the king, by the sons is very consistent with, for example, the philosophy of John Locke, who
Hmm.
justifies regicide and
Yeah.
whose theory was used as the rationalization, the theoretical driver of two revolutions, the English Revolution of the late 17th century and the American Revolution. So this is not, this is not some hocus pocus Freudian theory. What Freud is referring to in that part of his theory, and I'm especially like his essay Totem and Taboo. It's and what you're extrapolating on here, I think, is a very, I think, unexceptionable understanding of, uh, the dynamics surrounding fatherhood in our society. And I think,
Yes.
yes, I think
Yeah.
if there's one thing that we had to identify as the, what is driving the decline of the Western world today, I think, we could do far worse than look at the destruction of fatherhood as an institution.
Absolutely. And of course, it's destroyed in all kinds of various ways. But the idea of fatherhood really is the idea of an objective organization of society, so that what you do is determined by what needs to be done, and not by how you feel about it. And that is the lesson that the father teaches. And the son, the children interpret that as being a lack of love. And they don't see that they don't see the love behind it. They don't see that it's being done for them. All they see is that they are being required to do something that they don't feel like doing. And this violates, the very deep sense of being able to do what you want to do and and be loved for it.
Right.
And
So what you're saying really is that this results when this is perverted by the mother's resentment and so forth. It results in children whose development is arrested. They don't
abs
grow up.
Absolutely, at
Because
every level. I mean, you take a look at the test scores that kids these days show up. They can't read, they can't write, because all of this stuff is an implicate is a imposition of order, and the order doesn't have anything to do with you. It's just the order. There are rules to arithmetic. There are rules to language, and you don't make these up spontaneously. You have to take what's available. You have to take what's available, because everybody else is going to take it. And if you're going to cooperate with them, you've got to take it too.
uh,
And only in this way, in the past, only in this way have the fathers been able to produce what the mother was looking for. Now, I think what's characteristic of our times, though, is that it worked. I mean, the things that were preventing that were preventing mother from simply being able to be her own self were removed. And the result was supposed to be her own state of bliss. But it wasn't bliss. It was emptiness. I mean, the great thinker here was Betty Friedan, who saw who saw something that she called a problem with no name. The problem with no name, in which in which people just seemed to have a sense of meaningless and anxiety. The problem with no name was that there were no problems.
yeah.
And so what do you do? What do you do in this condition of emptiness? Well, which what you do is you find yourself some kind of structure, some kind of form, and the form that's immediately available is to take your own problem with that has no name, and um to to assign blame for it to whoever it was that created your situation of not having a problem.
Yeah, I think people in the past have pointed out that women in the 1950s and 60s were not oppressed. They were bored.
Of course, and look, it's so to this day. I mean, there is we tend to think of there being a struggle between men and women, and we think that that the women have won, but what the hell have they won? I mean, their whole life activity seems to be a matter of um, um, uh, adopting male forms because those are the only forms available,
Mm.
and without any particular attraction to the activities that take place with these forms. Look, um, for example, we in women's sports. It seems that the defenses that are made of women in playing sports and having their own separate venues is that this opens the way that this provides an opportunity for them to get external benefits for it. They'll get scholarships, they will get recognition, they will get all kinds of things from the sport that is not just the sport itself. Now you compare that with the way the with men and sports. Men do sports because they like to do it. Women do it because it's a job for them, because it's going to get them something else.
Right.
Because by themselves they really just don't have very much the doing of which has any appeal for them. They're empty, and I don't
Yeah,
see
and
that as being a win. Oh,
it's especially strange, I find, when traditional conservatives object to transsexuals entering women's sports, transgenderists entering women's sports, and
yeah,
violating women's sports. When in fact, all the transgenderists are doing is taking the feminist premise to its logical conclusion that gender is a social construct and it's artificial and all this, and
yeah,
so they're just pushing this. And
yeah,
women's sports, of course, is a bastion of feminism to begin with. So
yeah,
it's very
yeah.
strange.
Sure,
Could I
sure.
could
There
I
is
just
so much available for I mean, humor these days. Everything is so those things that aren't horribly tragic are so funny. There is so much irony to be had.
could I go back to a point we were talking about how the what goes on in the individual family is kind of writ large today in our society as a whole.
Yeah,
And we're basically a society that can't grow up. We're a society that we're stuck in we're superannuated. We're all kind of superannuated adolescents. And one manifestation I see of this, you mentioned Donald Trump as the king. I think at the time of his, especially his second inauguration, when there was this huge outpouring of hysteria by especially adolescent girls. And I think, at one time when you and I were young, Howard, in the 60s and 70s, feminism was, for all its faults, it was an intellectual movement. And some, very intelligent, educated women were pushing it, as is often the case. I think it's been kind of degraded and degenerated
oh
now,
God,
whereas the typical feminist seems to be about a 16-year-old hedonistic girl who just wants to milk every advantage she can get and fulfills all the stereotypes of the hysterical female. In
yes,
this case, in the case of Trump's inauguration, Janice Fiamingo has documented this very well about how this, and I fear that the civilization, especially in the United States, is being run nowadays increasingly by these teenage girls, people we used to call teeny boppers, followers of Taylor Swift. Uh, there was a lot of the last election about this. Is this the logical conclusion of what you're? Is this the litmus test that proves your the conclusion of your what
Well,
you're
no,
saying?
it's not the conclusion. It's just a stage. I mean, we've got plenty more of this coming. And one of the characteristics of it is the absolute disdain for logic. I mean, you can't make a case with these people. You can't make an argument. They won't pay any attention to any argument that you've got, you know? Um, the uh, the uh, the uh, the uh, the uh, the only question is whether they like the conclusion that you're coming to. Now, play that out for a number of years, and it looks like an absolute mess. But I mean, like logic is the province of the father. For the father had to develop logic because he had to cooperate. He had to cooperate because he needed to do something to gain mother's love. Take that away, and all you've got is whim,
Yeah.
whim, and increasingly psychosis. And uh,
Well, I argue that that when you take that away, what the only place for men left is prison. Once the man has no purpose in life, once he has no accomplishment as the head of the family, and as you say, the ruler of the
it's yeah.
civilization, then the only logical place for the father is in prison. And I think that's why today I believe that feminism has become little more and nothing less than an elaborate system for putting as many men in prison as possible. And this isn't that the logic of the revolt? If society is in a massive revolt against fathers, as you say, then the logical place to put those fathers. I mean, it is like Jacobinism or Bolshevism. The logical place is a kind of reign of terror and the
Well,
guillotine.
except that they're cutting down on the prisons and leaving them out on the street. The logical place for them is to be thugs, you know.
Yeah,
And homeless.
and homeless.
Are therefore social workers who are going to take care of these thugs. I mean, it's a jobs plan, for social workers. Um,
Female social workers, of course. Yeah.
Well, now that we're talking about where society is heading, and we have, I believe, several more decades of this social condition. Is there any way to course correct? Do we have any idea?
I've looked for something. I haven't seen anything. It looks to me like this is you know, this is Um, this is an advancing wave, and the only thing that I could say about that is as a way of advice for other men is to just make sure that in our individual cases, we keep our own side of the street clean.
Do you think there's hope I mentioned Christianity, which has some of this, of course, the killing of not the father, but, well, the killing of God is basically the basis of Christianity, the sacrifice of God in the form of the Son rather than the Father. But do you think I mean, Christianity's in a pretty sad state these days. The churches don't stand up to this. Do you think there's any hope in a revival of Christianity or religion in some form?
I don't know. What I see of this revival seems to me to be a rather programmatic. I mean, people following
Mhm.
um, people of following rules the way they follow rules in a
Mhm.
corporation.
Mhm.
I don't see any I don't see any connection with what I would regard as being God.
Yeah. Well, Howard, I think this has been a excellent, very stimulating show. I could think of a few more questions, but I think I'll let this soak into to our listeners, and maybe we come back some point and revisit some of this because I think this is this stimulates an awful lot of thought, and I hope people will pick up your work and look at it and take it seriously. Because I think if becoming conscious of this, aware of these dynamics, this dynamic that's taking place, and like I say, it's not just psychoanalysis. It's also, I mean, Greek tragedy. Did we mention that? Of course, this is
Yeah.
played
Yeah.
out there as well.
Yeah.
So it's, every civilization recognizes this, recognizes the importance, the primordial, is that the word? Importance of this. So I hope we'll get a little more of this. I should have, I meant to mention, someone like Helen Andrews, her, again, theory about the, again, her, her argument depends upon, psychological differences between men and women and all that, which appeals to common sense, and it makes sense, but it's not provable, and there's always exceptions, and I'm not sure it offers a whole lot of remedies to it. But I think I think really it's secondary. I think you've put your finger much more on a kind of primal element here, which I think we all need to tease out pursue the implications of much further.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yes, and before we go, I just have one more question. What is the proper relationship between men and women? I mean, if we're going to say that what we've been speaking about is uh, not disordered, but I mean, there has to be some type of proper relationship that would uh, have us avoiding the problems we're seeing. Is there a proper one that we can verbalize?
The thing is that by its nature, the relationship between men and women is fraught. There's always a tension in it. And we don't want to get rid of the tension because the tension is responsible for everything that we have accomplished, is responsible for all of creativity. Because here is a contradiction. You have to work your way out of the contradiction, and that working of the way out of contradiction, that is the new. Um, so I mean, it's not something that you can make very much in the way of plans for. Um, I don't know. Here again, what we each have to do is to watch out for our own side of the street, I think.
Yes, I agree.
Howard, how can people get a hold of your work and read more? What is the name of your book, the publisher? We'll put a
You
link
know,
to it
mo-
in
the,
the
the,
video.
one of the problems with my books is that they put these outrageous price tags on them.
Hmm.
The book that I think that I enjoyed the best, that I liked the best, was A Revolt of the Primitive, which was the first.
Right.
But I think they charged like $100 for it. That's ridiculous.
Hmm.
I don't know what to do about that.
Well, they can look at my cheaper book where forgive me for that,
Yeah,
where I summarize it. But I will, I'm going to quote it in my next book. I'm planning
Great.
to do it, and maybe I'll do an article on it or something. But you're right; it's outrageous. The price of academic books these days is just
Yeah.
ridiculous, especially
Yeah.
for yours, which I think is something that it's not an esoteric or obscure book at all. It's not written for specialists,
Yeah.
and it could be readily comprehended by people. So I think I'll make that. I'll try to make that a little bit my mission, and to get some of the best bits out there.
Oh, thank you. Part of my problem is what I was doing was ahead of its time. I mean, my first book on political correctness was in 2000, which is before anybody ever even knew that there was such a thing.
Um,
You know, it was just beginning. So it looked pretty obscure at the time, but it's certainly not no longer obscure. And I like it. I like it best because most of the insight that I had was was uh, was there and was expressed as um, well as expressiveness as spontaneous. So I like that book.
yeah.
But look, anybody that writes to me, we can work out some kind of an arrangement with something,
Okay.
So
Well,
that's
we'll put a link then on
Schwartz
the
at
video.
Oakland EDU.
We'll
yes.
make sure a link goes on the video, Bradley. Okay. Well, unless you have any questions, that's all I have for the moment. But I'd love to do this again sometime.
Yes, I would like to revisit these topics, and it's been a fascinating and highly informative conversation. And I thank you, Howard, for being with us today. And
Well, thank you. I thought it was great. I loved it.
yes, it was great. And I encourage listeners, if they want to listen to content on the cutting edge of sexual politics, to subscribe and to view our show. Thank you for being with me today.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you.
Take care, gentlemen.